Today is April 10th, 2013, and we're interviewing Clement Francis Marley, known as C.F. Marley.
That's right.
At Nokomis, Illinois. Mr. Marley is 92 years old, having been born on April 9th, 1921. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I'll be the interviewer. Mr. Marley, could you state for the record what war and branch of service you served in?
I was in World War II and served in the United States Navy Amphibious Forces.
And what was your rank when you were discharged?
Motor machinist mate first class.
Okay. And what years did you serve?
1942 to 1945.
And can you tell us, where did you take your basic training?
San Diego, California. For some of it, I was in, first of all, I went to a special motor machinist diesel and gasoline engine school at the University of Missouri for 8 weeks. And then I went to San Diego and got introduced into the landing craft. That's kind of where it was.
Okay, the landing craft. And what did you do with the landing craft?
Well, then they sent us to Fort Ord, California, Army base, and introduced us to the basic landing boats, landing procedures. We learned how to put soldiers onto the beach and how to back our boats off the beach. Backing off the beach is 10 times more difficult than driving onto a beach because you got to go back through breakers. We backed through breakers as tall as this room at the beach there at what is the beach? Yeah, my memory is so poor I can't remember. Pacific Grove is there. The beach right there by Fort Ord, California. Monterey Bay. It's across from the same bay that San Francisco is in. Now they're around the bend. And so we spent the whole summer of 1943. Is it 1943? Whole summer of 1943, training soldiers and ourselves in operation of landing boats. And we would take soldiers from a pier. They had a pier there, which is in this book here called Hit the Beach, and I'll give you a copy of that because it's all in there, all described in there.
Thank you. So your training was quite intensive.
I'd say that it was.
And after your training, where did you go?
After our training, we were put on a ship and sent to Southwest Pacific. First ship we were put on was sabotaged, and it was a Dutch ship, and some of the Dutchmen were sympathetic to Hitler, and they had put in filings in this is a diesel engine ship. They had thrown iron filings into the engine and crippled the engine. And so we limped back into San Francisco and put on another ship called the Bloemfontein, which was a Dutch ship. And the Bloemfontein actually was a icebreaker had a rounded bow, but we had 3,000 troops on there, and we headed for New Caledonia.
So the first ship, it was not around it?
No, no, the first ship, the shape of the ship had nothing to do with it. It was the filings that the guy put in the oil that ruined the engine.
And how come they put you on a Dutch ship?
Well, the Dutch were our allies. You see, people don't know. It really makes a lot of sense. The Dutch owned the oil of the Southwest Pacific, and I just looked this up on the internet this morning to make sure I had it right. But the Japanese plan really was to knock our fleet out, and they didn't really want a big war with the United States. They just wanted us to stay off their back while they took over the oil of the Dutch East Indies. That's what they wanted to come down through the Philippines and get that oil. That's what they were after.
So the Dutch did not have the troop support, so they became our allies.
Yes, that's right. Well, the Dutch was never a big nation, and they had to ally with other people. They were allied with the United States and with England and Australia. See, this island that we went to was right near Australia. When we first went overseas, we went to New Caledonia, and New Caledonia is perhaps, I think, about 5 flying hours from Brisbane, Australia. So we were well down in the South Pacific. So then we got down into that part of the world. Then they brought us back up to the Solomon Islands and to Guadalcanal. Guadalcanal is a name that people hear about mostly because that's where the war turned around. So that's where we went. That became our base, is Guadalcanal and Tulagi. That became our base, where we operated from to go further north. The real goal in the South Pacific was to take Rabaul. Rabaul was to be the Japanese equivalent of Pearl Harbor. That was their biggest base they ever had in the South Pacific.
And did we do that?
They've got their base built, but our task was to take it away from them.
And did we do that?
Yes, we did that, but we didn't do it head on. We built a ring around Rabaul, and that's what I did. In other words, when my first engagement, and I've got copies of that I'll give you here, was at Bougainville, and Bougainville was perhaps 150, 200 miles from Rabaul. And we could, well, you see, no country is big enough to occupy all the lands they'd like to, so they do it with bases. They'll build this big base, and you don't attack anybody there. They could, with that base, they could run out and attack a lot of people. But as long as they're there, they're a threat. You can't have any peace as long as you have a strong base there, and they've got airplanes that fly out of there on ships. That's the way it worked.
So did you have aircraft fly off of your ship?
No, we didn't have that. We didn't have that. We had air strips. What they did what turned the war around was the fact Guadalcanal was the first go-around, the first offensive action we had in the war. And what had happened was the Japanese were started to build an airfield there. And they were proceeding with their goal of controlling the South Pacific. They were going to control New Guinea and North, and even parts of Australia, maybe, Singapore, all that. They were working on that end up there.
So what what was your duties? What was your involvement in this?
Well, the first thing that we did is that our attention then, instead of going over and attacking the Japanese on their terms, we stayed a little further back and built a base from which we could attack their base. See, they built their base at Rabaul to be the Pearl Harbor of the South Pacific for them. And so what we did is went in. Well, I wasn't a part of it at the time. I was still home. But that's when they took Guadalcanal. The reason for taking Guadalcanal was so that they could put pressure on Rabaul. Now, by the time I got there, which was a year later, this stuff didn't happen real fast. And a year later, I got there, and they had built another base closer to Rabaul, which was built at Bougainville. And that's where I come into it, at Bougainville. I got a chart there to show you that. So we went into Bougainville and made we built a base at Bougainville. Well, the Japanese didn't like that. And so as we were working, they were sending people down to attack us for trying to build this base at Bougainville. And the reason for building the base at Bougainville was so that we could bomb Rabaul. That's what it was.
So while you were at Bougainville, what was your duty?
Well, at Bougainville, our primary duty, our base, you see, we had our own base. We were a landing craft outfit. That was what we were. We didn't have any boats assigned to our name. We were a landing craft outfit. And we would fill in wherever it was needed. And so when there were 4 ships primarily, and I can't name all of them, but President Adams and Jackson and Hayes and Hunter Liggett and George Clymer, those are all names that you'd hear. Those were the ships that would take troops up to the front. And so we made a landing at Bougainville, made a beach there. But it had to have more support all the time. So more and more support was brought in to keep building that base. And then that base would bomb Rabaul. That's the way they took Rabaul. We built our own airstrip at Bougainville so it could bomb Rabaul. And then they wanted to build further around Rabaul, so 6 months later we went up and we took Green Island. And the idea there, again, we built there was the ideal island they put 2 airstrips on Green Island, one for fighter planes and one for bombers. And the one they bombed Rabaul virtually every day, and the other airstrip went further up north. There was more activity up there, so they had bombers that could take off from that airstrip and go further north. So we were just building a ring around Rabaul. That's what it was. And finally, in the final analysis, and this is anticipating your question, but in the final analysis, we made it so tough on Rabaul that they couldn't do anything. In fact, the day that we went into Rabaul to Bougainville, they had a very strong attack from the Japanese because they didn't want us building any airfields around there. And they came down with this is all on the internet. You can find it on the internet. And I have it in my material here. And I'm quoting off the top of my head, so I could be off a little bit. But they flew out something like 173 planes, the Japs, and they lost most of them. They lost maybe 120. Now the reason, and then that was the first real shoot 'em action that I was in. I got pictures on the wall there of how these chaps looked that were coming at us. They come in a flight of formation, and they had fixed landing gear. They didn't have any. In fact, they used an airplane that was originally designed by Howard Hughes, and the American forces didn't pick it up, but the Japanese did. So that's where they got the design for their airplane. But well, that's enough. You're going to have to ask me another question.
How many men were in your company?
I'm going to say we took 2 barracks to hold us, about 300. That's what we were, and what we did is filled in when they it was when they made the first landing at Bougainville. I was not there that day. They did it with the landing boats the ships carried, and they ran into bad weather. And I'll tell you that you could get onto a beach easier than you could get off of it. And they lost a lot of their boats because they couldn't back off the beach. So they had to be refilled. And they lost some crews. I don't know just where all that went. But our outfit was to patch other people up. They drew from our crews to fill in the blank spaces on those main ships. There was about, like I told you, I listed all of them. Those ships, well, we just became their landing boats. That's all.
Were you filling in that day?
Pardon?
Were you filling in on another ship that day?
Was I filling in?
Filling in.
Oh yes, that's right. We went up on the 8th, the 13th, and 19th, I believe it was, and we were up there the day. Oh, there's another factor that it's good in a way. I could give you better answers now than I could have a year ago or 6 months ago, because I couldn't believe my eyes how quick they were shooting these planes down. I could still see in my mind's eye these planes coming on. I mean, they're flying in formation, and their wheels are down, really stood out. But they got to shoot, falling to the ground. The water's so bad. and I couldn't figure out how they could be that good shooting them down. Well, I didn't find out until a couple of years ago that they had developed an electronic way for those shells to be detonated. They did not actually have to hit the plane to be detonated. And there's a term for it, but it was an electronic, and the Japs didn't know that, and they ran into this electronic firepower, and I remember seeing the record shows it as 5 or 6 planes, I believe, what they said, and they were coming down at the same time, burning furiously, and they hit the water. They'd burst open their gasoline, and then all that gas would be on the water. That just fire worse. But it was a terrible thing to see them come down, because they come down flaming all the way, and then they hit the water. It's much more flaming even yet. And it was all because of, not all because, but a big reason because. Now you're getting into something here that's going to have an impact on me getting this award.
And what award was that?
For bringing up their telephone cable they had lost. And we're talking about another island now.
Okay, and what island is that?
That's at Green Island. That happened at Green Island.
Okay.
Now, I want to say this. Two of the planes, we had a pilot from Kansas. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know it until many years later, 50 years later. How did this go? He was able to, he became an ace. To be an ace, you had to be shot 5 planes to be an ace. And it turned out that he got 2 airplanes on 1 dive. So I don't know where he got his other 3, but he got 2 of his airplanes on 1 dive. So and I don't know whether that started him being an ace or finished him, but he got 5 and was an ace.
The medal that you got that you're talking about,
yeah,
was that the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal that you received?
That's what it's called. That's right.
And you got that for helping.
That was it. And I've got them. I think I can show you right here in a chart. I will tell you this, talk about this as I go through it. This is what it looked like at Bougainville when the day they landed. Now, I wasn't there that day. That's the day they lost their boats. Okay, here is the beach at Bougainville. And we occupied this much beach clear over to here. And the Japs had, through the night, they had sent up more ships, and they were going to make it a counter landing. So they unloaded several hundred of their troops over here. And while we were landing here, they were having a little battle going on right here. And of course, they finally put him out of business, but they did do that. I'll get here. Now this is significant. That these things don't follow just exactly like they should, but when the Japs saw that they were in trouble and not going to be able to hold their base at Rabaul the way they thought they could, they had to send some troops, send some of their ships down there to reinforce Rabaul. And they had another base called Truk, spelled Truk. And that's where, one of these maps I'll show you, it turns out, as I do this in retrospect, and I read on it many times since the war, the day that we left to go to Bougainville, the Japs left Truk with a big fleet to come to Rabaul. They were going to reinforce Rabaul. We were going to go to Bougainville. So it was kind of a game of chicken. In other words, they were coming from the north. They started coming from the north the same time we did from the south. And we didn't know that. But anyhow, that's what happened. And this shows you some of the, well, that's another island. That's not that island. Let me hold that off. This is Rabaul, though. And what happened was that Admiral Halsey had 2 aircraft carriers available with planes that could drop bombs. And military science tells you never to attack a land base with airplanes. But he didn't have anything a land base with aircraft carriers. But all he had was 2 aircraft carriers. And as luck would have it, he brought those aircraft carriers up close enough to where they had perfect weather for landing, and they went off and they bombed the Rabaul, the Japs in Rabaul, and then they returned to the aircraft carriers, and it was a very successful flight. They lost some, but they didn't lose very heavily. So it was a very extreme. But anyhow, there was enough damage done to the Japs at Rabaul, yeah, right, that they pulled their fleet back out. They turned their fleet around and took it back out of there. And they gave up any further idea of taking Bougainville. Yeah.
And that's when you were in Bougainville.
I wasn't in Bougainville. Well, yes, that's right. That's right. We were making the landing at Bougainville. Now, let me see what else on here. And these leads you some more questions too, I guess. Well, I look like that goes to that one. These were the ships that we used. These don't follow just exactly with our way of telling our story, but they'll give you an idea of what it looked like. This was our landing day. This is what we looked like the day we landed. See, it's calm, and the boats are just like cars parked on the curb there. There's no big surges of water. The water could get very wild. Okay. Well, I'm going to another operation here. this will show you what happened at Green Island, if you can take it. It's your interview. Shall I go ahead with it?
Yes.
Okay. To make this landing at Bougainville, or at Green Island. Now, Green Island is further north. It's another leap up, and it puts it closer to Raval. And they wanted to get this so they could see these are airstrips here. They wanted to build that. They hadn't been built yet. That was a coconut plantation when we took it. And they took bulldozers and pushed the coconut trees out, and they become a shale runway. And they made a fighter strip and an airstrip there. But this shows you how we come into Green Island. This is Green Island now. And Green Island, you notice the oval shape? It's the top of an old volcano. It's what you call an atoll. Now, the Japanese had taken, in this island, we don't have an overall map of the area. It'd be nice to have that. But the Japanese had occupied, this had been a Catholic mission here. And that's what they had occupied. Now, this was a case where the New Zealand 3rd Infantry was given the task of taking this island. So we worked with the New Zealand 3rd Infantry. To go up to the island, we needed some fast transports. So the Navy had taken World War I destroyers and turned them into transports, and they would carry 4 landing boats each. But you couldn't get inside there's little channels were only about 17, 18 feet deep, and you couldn't depend on it because of the tide and everything, and they didn't want to get trapped in there anyway. So anyhow, they kept the destroyers out here and put us in the water. And then at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was on the first boat to come through this lagoon, or first channel. We went through here and we landed over on this side. And then some other landing boats come in here and landed on this side. So they had troops on both sides. And the New Zealand strategy was that they were going to have a pincers moving down here. Now the other thing that they did, so if you're going to take a base like that, which is, it's come to find out after it was all said and done, they interviewed, after they finished off the area, they went in there and they found out the Japs had heavy guns in there, had tank guns in there. Well, obviously the Japanese never thought anybody would ever try to take them from the backside. They figured if anybody's going to take them, they're going to come up this way. And that's why they had those tank guns. Okay, so the strategy was that they put an artillery position right here. They shot, I don't know, 6 or 7 inch guns. And the strategy was going to be to fire into here. You don't take a base like this head on with rifles. You fire on them with cannon. And there's a cannonball from more Civil War. See that round ball? Okay. So you fire that and you shell them with cannon fire. And you kill them that way, many as you can. Then when you're finished, and I think you got all of them, then you go in with your rifles. Okay? Well, now here's what happened. They come around here and they put some of their infantry on that side, and they were going to make a Pincers movement down there. We took these guys over here, and they were going to march down here. And then we got down here, they were going, and the artillery was here, and they wanted a telephone cable to go across over here so that the infantry could tell them where to fire, drop their shells, because they could see. Well, now what happened was the New Zealanders had never done this before, and I don't blame them, that's not their fault, but they weren't alert enough or didn't think about it. But anyhow, late in the day, it was late in the afternoon, about 4:30 in the afternoon, maybe 5, and there's something else that's curious. At the equator, the days are always 12 hours long. You know, the Earth don't tilt the way it does. It stays more or less. But anyhow, it was long about 5 o'clock, and we only had another hour of sunshine. And we were taking this, and we were told to go over here to the artillery position. See, we were taking orders from the New Zealanders. They were our bosses. So we went over there, and they said, well, you guys, we're going to put on this big roll of telephone wire, and we want you to take it down here. So these guys can see where to shoot over here. You following me? Okay. Well, anyhow, like I say, I'm a kid from the country. And I had no authority on that boat other than make the engine run and the boat run. But my farm background told me they didn't tie down the dolly that had the wire on it. And I didn't say nothing. It's one place where military rule worked against them, but they should have tied it down. See? Okay, well, we got to going over to unroll everything, fire. Wires are going out. All of a sudden, the thing snaps, caught. You know, like you're unrolling a hose, it'll get caught. That's what happened. It got caught, and it just plopped in the water. They didn't, and the guy, the New Zealander in charge, he about had a heart attack. He said he had nowhere to go, nothing to do. He says, they call them chaps. He says, our chaps are going to need that artillery before night. And they knew they did. Meanwhile, the chaps that were down there could have fired on us anytime they wanted to because we were close enough. But they didn't. They didn't know what we were doing. Well, he was just devastated, and I was, like I say, I'm a kid from the country, and I could see, I knew from, you know, they said in the Navy, when I went in, that sailors, that kids from the country make good sailors. And I could, you know, I went in one ear, I said, why would that be? You know what I mean? I couldn't even swim. The deepest water I was ever in was up to my waist. But I felt it worked out that day. And I knew how to do it because of having made hay and worked with ropes and so forth. And I have, if I can find a picture of it here, I've got a picture of the, oh, here you go. I'll show you that. See that? That's a kind of a landing boat we were using. And you see how that ramp is down? Okay, one of the one is One of those items you see by that guy's foot is a chain to keep the ramp from dropping all the way down, and the rest of it is a block and tackle. All right, now a block and tackle, maybe you don't know what a block and tackle is. Do you know what a block and tackle is? Well, a block and tackle, I think I got, I believe I for my demonstration there, I got a little item. The block and tackle has got a movable pulley in it. Now, instead of pulling directly here, if you pull on the pulley, it only takes half the amount of pressure. See, because it's just the law of the ground. Well, anyhow, that's what it looked like right there. And I said to the guy, the officer in charge, I said, I don't know if this will work or not, but I said, we could go back to where you started. I could make a, let me turn this page. This here, I'm showing how the pulley, that had been sitting there, and it's showing how it got jerked off. And then I took that block and tackle from, you can see it in that picture there, and tied a rope on one, took it apart, and tied it over the side like that, and run that telephone cable through here. And I says, as we travel along, that'll pull up that telephone cable. Knew the Henderson. He says very well. He says, sounds like, I don't know exact words, but it sounded kind of wild to him. And he said, but we don't have anything else. He said, let's try it. And I didn't know it'd work either, to tell you the truth, for sure. But we went back there and tried that. And by golly, we pulled it back up. We pulled it back up and we got it back on. I said, now, let's put that dolly down and tie it down this time. So they did. And it took it back. And when we gave them the live end to the infantry, it was over here. And then the infantry could see where the shot should land. They could see it. The guys with the artillery, because of the brush, they couldn't see anything. They knew how to aim stuff, but they couldn't see anything. So we gave them the live end of the wire, and so help me, we turned around to go back because our base was right next to the artillery. And when we went by, we could hear the artillery going overhead. So they were fine. So it did work. But anyhow, I'll show you. But war is a dirty thing, I'll tell you that. So I'll have to show you what happened. It's terrible. I think I'm going to. Yeah. I know that picture's in here. There's the end of it. We killed them all. You can't take it for the only live Jap I saw there was one of them that had an injury and he couldn't move, couldn't get out of there. They didn't kill him. They didn't kill him in cold blood, you know what I mean? But so they took him to the hospital. but that's the only saw one live Jap there, and the rest of them they killed them all. And instead of burying them, this is that high. See that being a volcano, the rock is just rock up above, so they just pitched them down here to be killed. So anyhow, that's my story.
So you were at 3 islands.
I actually got, I will give you the, I was actually at, well, I was at 3 islands, yes. Well, more than that. I was at, our first base was at, Guadalcanal, it was Guadalcanal. That's not the name of the base. Where were we first? I'll think of it, but not right now. But anyhow, we were. I was really attached at Tulagi, really, Tulagi. That was the first base. And then the next base was Green Island. And then finally, finally see the war moved on from after Rabaul was eliminated. Rabaul never was eliminated. It just was surrounded. Rabaul was castrated, shall we say. Could never do anything. In fact, there were still Japs on Rabaul and the war was over. But we moved on to another base. We were prepared to go into preparing landing boats. My last job was as a beach master at Manus, M-A-N-U-S, Manus Island. We were working day and night to prepare landing boats for the landing on Japan when the atomic bomb was used.
And how close were you to the atomic bomb?
Well, we didn't know anything. We couldn't see it or anything. We were many miles from the atomic bomb. You see, Green Island is actually south of the equator. So, equator on up, long way. One of the things I have to tell you this, I'm still going to, because I had 2 years of intense sunshine. And I used to have, I bet you I've had 120 little cancers taken off with that freezing process. You know about that? I'll go up there. They're pretty well on top of it now, but I had one dugout here. That was lanced. But most of these he's done with that cold treatment.
Okay, so you...
Now I have to tell you, let me tell you the unbelievable, the most unheard of thing you ever heard of. War is so unbelievable. Things that happen. In fact, I told you I got 7 kids, and I never ever told them. I never told them this at all. Well, we had, and I was one of the leaders of it. We had what we call the Solomon Island Veterans, and we met for the longest time in Springfield. once a year, sometimes oftener. And they used to have that big feed yourself place down on the south end of town. Can't think of the name of the restaurant down there, but that's where we would meet. And in the process, I put out a newsletter. I'll give you a copy of it, or the kind that we had. And it was late. Now this is so unbelievable. It didn't occur to me until 1999 that maybe I ought to tell this story. I never told anybody. Don't know why. No reason not to. Just didn't. Wasn't afraid of it. But for that year, I wrote it up in our newsletter. And lo and behold, this is so unbelievable. I can't believe it yet. I told you about this guy that became an ace shooting down. Well, I saw two of them go in. I mean, I know after I got acquainted with him. I saw 6 of them hit the water that day. Well, anyhow, he had a thing that was under a thorn under his saddle. And that was, he was with the Marine outfit that flew these airplanes, these double fuselage airplanes. And they were the first outfit to get in the South Pacific. And they had a longer range than anybody else. Well, they heard that this Admiral Yamamoto, the guy that bombed Pearl Harbor, they said Yamamoto was going to be down to Bougainville and investigate, or have a look at their facilities. And they were at Guadalcanal, and they said, well, we got enough, we could do enough distance now to shoot him down. So that's what they did. They made up their mind that they're going to shoot the guy down. Well, they went up and did it. Well, then a big argument developed over which of two guys, 2 of them claimed that they were the ones that shot. And I could find the names, I want to dig it up. But it's on the internet too. It's the second Yamamoto mission to the South Pacific. If you want to look up on the internet, you can find that. Well, anyhow, this banker, this guy that was that told the New Zealander, he was a banker from Kansas. And he heard enough of this argument and what happened is that Yamamoto's plane went down in the Bougainville, the jungle of Bougainville. And they removed Yamamoto's body, but the airplane is still there now, I guess. Well, these 2 guys that claimed they shot him down, one guy said I gave him 6 o'clock, which is right behind. The other guy said I gave him 4 o'clock, which is over at this end. Well, this George Chandler was his name, or keep that in mind. Chandler said, well, I'm going to go down there, and we're going to take a look at which way those bullets came from. That's hit the plane, you know. And so when I got down there, he, like I say, he had money to spend. He had money he hadn't folded. Anyhow, he went clear down to Guadalcanal, down to Bougainville. And they got down there, they wouldn't let him in because they were having a war, new war. And the new war was that Bougainville turned out that it's got a copper mine on it. One of the biggest copper mines in the world is Bougainville. And after the war, they created a new nation down there, Bougainville, another one. And they're supposed to send some of their copper revenue to the other islands. And the guy that was running Bougainville says, to hell with them, I'm not going to send him anything. So that was their war, see. So when he got down there, they wouldn't let him in. Well, the upshot of it was, and this is where it becomes so screwy, he got down there and there was a younger guy from New Zealand researching what happened in New Zealand, what the New Zealanders did. And this flyer accidentally ran into him, struck up a conversation with him, talked about Green Island, told him about my situation, where I retrieved that kid. And that New Zealander got all interested in it and picked it up and put it in their files. So I said to myself, you know, I'm not that damn modest. I said, if that's worth an award, I'll ask for it. So I presented to him and I said, well, yeah, we give you that award for that. That happened all because of that. Yeah, unbelievable.
Okay, go on.
Okay, well, I don't know where to pick up right after that.
So you got the award.
Yep, got the award, and then I thought, what the heck, you know, the New Zealand. I got correspondence with him. I'll give it to you. The guy that did the research, he put it in the museums in New Zealand. And I thought, well, if it's worth that, why not, you know. But what's happened to him, I don't know. But now here's the other thing. Unbelievable. This Chandler got 2 planes. He was an ace, I told you. And he got 2 of those planes in one dive at Bougainville. I saw 6 of them planes go in the water at Bougainville, and that wasn't, you know, it was an area you could see around. I know 2 of them had to be his planes.
Did you know him at the time?
No, I didn't know him till 1999.
Did you
Now I want to tell you one other, so don't forget about it. I never did meet him, Chandler. Talked to him several times on the phone. Promised myself that this year or last year was going to be my day. I was going to go out to Kansas and meet the guy. Well, I'm a son of a gun. We both had, I had that operation too. Ever heard of an aortic aneurysm? Well, I had that operation clear down here, and I survived. He took it, and he got the stroke, and he died. He died last year, and I didn't get a chance to meet him.
What other medals or citations did you?
What's that?
What other medals or citations did you receive?
Well, the routine ones, more or less.
And what were they?
Well, they were the Asiatic Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that down.
Right.
American Theater, World War II.
The American Theater of World War II?
American Theater of Operations.
Mm-hmm.
Pacific Theater of Operations, I believe. And then there's
You got 3 battle
stars. I got a battle star for Bougainville, a battle star for Green Island, and a battle star for, I guess, just being in the war.
Mm-hmm. And which one is the Pacific Theater of Operation? Can you show it to me? You've got
Yes,
your
it's the yellow one.
yellow one?
Yeah.
And what's the green one? The small green one?
Well, let me take a look and see if I know what you're talking about. Well, the small green one is the Navy Marine Combination Medal. That's what the. And here, let me tell you another unbelievable story.
Okay.
I got to tell somebody an unbelievable story. I needed somebody when I inquired of the Navy if I was qualified for it. I said, well, you have to have somebody to verify. Well, the guys in my outfit knew it. I was unenlisted, but he had to be an officer. And I said, where in the hell would I find an officer that would remember this? And I got to thinking, and finally it occurred to me, when we were down in the Pacific, we had to take an Admiral. It was like, what's that disease that's so prevalent? Oh,
Malaria?
malaria. There is a pill you can take for that. Keep you from getting it. Admiral, Atabrine. And the guys used to hate it. And they used to have we used to line up for the chow line. And they used to have an officer there and he'd throw it in your mouth. Everybody had to take that Admiral. And I've got some Admiral in there yet. Well, anyhow, it occurred to me that at one of our meetings in Springfield, this guy brought some Admiral, and he told about Green Island. And I thought, well, would it be possible that he would know about this? And I contacted him, and he was a lawyer up here on the Illinois River. That's what his job is. And he says, yes, I remember that. He says, I remember, he says, I was in charge of the walkie-talkie radios. And he said, we were mad at you guys for losing that cable. And I said, well, us guys didn't lose that cable. New Zealanders lost that cable. Anyhow, he said that he had dispatched a boat over with walkie-talkies. It didn't what the walkie-talkies used, because the Japs could hear the walkie-talkie. The Japs would know what we were doing, and they would turn their guns on us. See, the Japs never did turn their guns on us because they didn't know what we were doing. If they had known that we were fixing to shell them, they could have fired on us with rifles and got us. And you know, it's a funny thing about war. I went up there, and it's calm here now. It was the nicest doggone day you ever saw. And I looked down that water, and heck, it was just like a cow pond. And here's this war going on. Front line, you couldn't have got any more than a front line than that.
Was it hard to stay in touch with your family?
Well, you know, yes, it was. But I'll have to tell you this, as part of, I guess you'd have to say that I was interested in the war. And I'm still a fanatic at watching the news. My dad was a fanatic at listening to the radio. We live in the country. I was born just a mile over here. We used to listen to Gabriel Hayter and I don't know who all. And I knew about the war. In fact, one of the things about the war I think is still horrendous, and you act like the scariest thing I ever did, that was it. At Pearl Harbor, they capsized a landing a battleship. I got the story in there. In fact, I talked to a guy that only very few got out. And they were trapped in there upside down. And they died in there. And I thought that's the darndest, toughest way to go that I could think of. They died in there like like rats. And the most frightening thing, you asked about the frightening thing, I guess the most frightening thing, because I was horrified by that, but we were temporary duty on these ships, and whenever we'd have an attack, see we'd sail by Jap bases. We just sail by them. They had airplanes up. Well, they would send up planes trying to attack us, and then we'd have general quarters. And all the time, because we didn't have, most of the ship's company had a gun they went to, because we were temporary duty, just using for transportation. We didn't have none. So we went to the chow hall. Now the reason for that was the rest of the ship is airtight. I don't know if you know that. Well, you close down watertight doors. It's in there, so that if a ship, because you can hit it, if you hit a ship in one compartment, you can flood that compartment, and it'll still float. But if you get two of them, I don't think it will. But anyhow, when you have general quarters, our duty was to get out of there and go to the chow hall. And then they'd close them airtight doors. Well, you had just a few minutes to get. Well, it got, when we had in their general quarters this night, I didn't move fast enough and I got locked in there. And you could go up, they had ladders. You could go up, down, up. You go down, you go back where the screw, shaft turned the screw. You could go from there, clear up, but you couldn't open. And you don't dare open them there watertight doors. You do, you're a court-martial. So there I got the feeling of what it was, just to be trapped in there. Nothing happened, I got out. But I thought of those guys that went like that. Terrible.
Did you keep anything as a good luck piece while you were in the service?
No. I'll tell you, you asked the other question, I'll finish answering. I was always interested in war, and I always wrote home. And I wrote home every day. And I'd write to Mother because she'd answer. And I got home. My mom says, there's only one thing I don't like about you being home. I says, what's that? I don't get that letter every day.
Could you tell her where you were?
No. But there's lots to talk about. South Pacific is a world of its own, see? Yeah.
Did you ever get to go on leave when you were?
Went to Australia. Yeah. Finally did. We were over there a long time, come August of 1944. 44, 45. When did the war end? War ended. Anyhow, I got a chance to go to law. And that particular, what you did then, to get to Australia, you take a combination. There wasn't any planes that could fly that full distance. So they had what they call MATS, Military Air Transportation Service. And the airplane that everybody used in those days was that two-prop airplane that they use on transports. So we went that we drove that. We flew down as far as what's that big island down there? Can't think of the name of it. It's in that book. I'm going to give you that book. Anyhow, we had to take flying boats. You remember what they call a China Clipper? We took the flying boat then from there on into Brisbane, Australia. Then we got to Brisbane, Australia. we went 100 miles inland on a train. And then we met at a place called, I can't think of the name of it. Yeah, that don't make any difference. Toowoomba. Toowomba. That's where we went. And it was a case of just knocking around. It was only place I ever saw that we had a fire. We had a fire in a fireplace. And up there, we never ever built a fire. I'll go over there and see if we pull you up a few of our Solomon newsletters.
Okay, wait a minute here. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm not finished. Do you recall the day your service ended?
Well, I remember getting out of there. Exactly ending. Now I know where we ended up where I started out, Great Lakes.
Was there a group of you?
No.
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 Did you have a party when you came home?
No. No party.
What did you do after you got out of the service?
Well, like I told you, I was always interested in more, and I was never. I have to tell you this. I'm glad my dad's dead because he's not going to hear this. But we worked like hell on the farm, and I never had any fun on the farm. I didn't like farming, and I wanted to get the hell off of it. And I goofed off in high school, but I come to a conclusion later that a guy got to have a little fun someplace. And as far as I was concerned, high school was the only fun I had. So I wasn't much of a student. But, and I got surprised because I got into these, like I told you, we went to 8 weeks at University of Missouri to engine school. And hell, I ended up, I think, 32nd in the class. And I couldn't believe it. I said, some other guys must be some dumbass over here. But anyhow, I think that probably I probably wasn't using my full capacity. Didn't have anything. And the other thing, now here's another thing that happened. Because I was so interested in the current events, you couldn't get radio or newspapers. But Time magazine had what they called a pony edition. You ever hear of that?
No.
Well, might sometime write that down and find it on the internet, pony edition. Pony edition of Time magazine is they took out all the advertising and shrunk it down to about half size, and it would be about a 5x7, and they could send that to your airmail. And I had so much. Again, the war was a lot of time on your hands, and running that landing. Being an engineer. Oh, there's the other thing. I wasn't supposed to be an engineer on a landing boat. I was supposed to have been a guy that reported the engines. See? I was supposed to be an engine repairman in a shop. But what happened was it got hard up they was losing too many boat crews in the South Pacific, and they had to pull a draft for somebody. So they put us on the boat. So anyhow, that created nothing but a problem, because the real captain of the boat is a seaman. And a seaman is as low as you can get. He's like a private. So here we were like, I was one notch below a chief. And that just created endless friction. Ratings. But on the other hand, it was a good thing I was there to help them out that pulley that if I hadn't, that is, let's say this. I don't think anybody ever had another situation. There was never another situation reported like that. Never. And after I got into it, I was, pulling it up. I said, boy, I hope that thing don't snag on them big rocks. We had rocks down there bigger than this.
Well, Mr. Marley, I would like to thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate you asking.
And I would like to thank you for the time you gave to our country and for the time you served. I appreciate it. Thank you.